Welcome back to Long Covid Doctor, an educational series for Long Covid sufferers. I'm Dr. Tim Robinson, formerly a family doctor for 30 years, now working in Long Covid Services for 5 years. I post on podcast channels and YouTube. I hope you find them helpful. If you do, click on subscribe, spread the word. Thanks for any feedback. Apologies though, for no replies from me, I'm afraid. I just haven't got the time. They're appreciated though, because they help me with my future postings. Another apology, important though, my usual disclaimer. Any advice or treatment I mention should only be considered after discussion with your own doctor. So, this talk is all about long COVID fatigue. I've divided it into two parts to make it more digestible, less overwhelming, less tiring. So, part one is the causes and the various aspects of long COVID fatigue. And the second part is how to tackle it, the strategies and outcomes. So, here we go, long COVID fatigue. Fatigue in long COVID is indeed the commonest symptom of long COVID. Basically, the fatigue that you get with the acute illness then shifts into the long COVID form, the long COVID fatigue. But before going down that avenue, let's be sure of what we're doing and be sure that the fatigue you've got is due to your long COVID. We mustn't be long COVID blind, meaning or because you've got a new symptom and you've also had COVID and hence long COVID, it doesn't mean that we can actually necessarily attribute that symptom to long COVID. So any new symptom, obviously, you do the sensible thing, you go to a GP. GP will talk to you, examine you, probably take blood tests, looking for other diagnoses that might explain this new symptom that you've got. The GP will also be looking for red flags, those symptoms or signs that suggest anything more sinister, more serious, such as weight loss, for example. Is that due to long COVID or is it due to perhaps perisher thought, say cancer? Are your symptoms suggestive of diabetes or sort of an endocrine hormonal problem like Addison's leading to fatigue? So once those other causes are ruled out, then we're left with fatigue because of your long COVID. So long COVID fatigue. What next? So long COVID fatigue, what does it feel like? What's it like living with it? What does it mean? What effect does it have on you? So patients describe all sorts of things like just feeling tired or shattered or exhausted or washed out or drained. It's not like a normal type of fatigue. It's sort of, normal fatigue in a healthy person is, it's there when you've overdone it in some way. And then next day after rest and a good night's sleep, you feel better, recharged and ready to face the day and undertake all that you want to do. But with long COVID fatigue, next day you feel shattered, equally as shattered, having had a rest and a sleep. And it's a sort of a whole body exhaustion. You feel thoroughly wrung out. And your legs feel weak and feeble and sort of jelly-like. And you've woken up, you drag yourself out of bed and, you just feel that the energy levels are nil. So when do you get fatigue? And what are those, let's think about energy and what are the energy drains, what is sort of sapping your energy. So as I've talked about, it could be something that you've done excessively physically. So you've done too much physically. That's led to that fatigue and has drained your energy. Or equally, it might be something that you've done mentally, too much mental activity. So too much reading, too much writing, focusing and concentrating on something for too long. has drained your energy levels. Or indeed, socially, too much social interaction, what with family or friends, or, meeting some friends in a bar, a pub, or a cafe, has sort of taken it out of you. So sort of you've overdone it socially. Thinking about energy, sort of essentially, our body has a finite energy capacity, a finite amount of energy to be able to expend. Every cell in the body makes energy, and then, if you like, add all those individual cells, the energy that they create into one. That is the finite amount of energy that you have got available to be able to use up. Finite in the sense of that is your one energy battery. And there is a fixed capacity in that battery. And that's the energy that you can use to undertake those tasks, those physical tasks, mental tasks, social tasks. But with long COVID, that energy, like I've said, that energy battery, that the capacity is reduced. You have a smaller battery. The recovery time to recharge that battery is reduced. And so, it takes longer to get the energy, the battery level back up to normal. Which is a problem, isn't it? Because in a way, it's human nature. We see ourselves. We've got a task ahead of us, physical, mental, or social. Got a task, and you just want to get it done. You ignore the signals that your energy levels are lower than normal, and you tend to overdo it, and this leads to a worsening state of your energy, and it takes therefore longer to get over that energy deficit, longer to recharge, and the fatigue therefore lasts longer. So what you've done is, in a way, you've boomed. You've actually pushed and tackled a problem, but you've then busted because you've sort of overdone it. You've burnt yourself out. You've crashed. We call this the boom and bust cycle. So boom and busting results in two things. One is post-exertional malaise, and the other is post-exertional symptom exacerbation. So post-exertional malaise is, with prolonged fatigue after exerting yourself. Post-exertion malaise, unwell, below par, and so then that is, as I've said, is called post-exertional malaise, and that can last sort of a couple of days, maybe even a week. Some people get it even for longer than that, having done something excessively, and it can come on the next day, or can come on 2 or 3, 4 days later, and you can sort of chart it back to overdoing it on a specific day. That's post-exertional malaise. There's also post-exertional symptom exacerbation. Okay, so when you've overdone it physically, mentally, socially, not only do you have excessive fatigue, but also you have your long COVID symptoms returning. So those long COVID symptoms may have quietened down, say headaches or breathlessness or muscle pains, joint pains, etc., quietened down, and you're actually getting better on for those features of your long COVID. If you overdo it physically, mentally, socially, then those symptoms that you had previously, those long COVID symptoms, can then revisit you, can relapse, can return. Not good. Post-exertional symptom exacerbation. So let's turn to that question. Well, why have you got long COVID fatigue? What are the causes? What has led to this? Basically, it comes down to two groups, either the direct causes or the indirect causes. So let's focus on the direct causes first of all. So, with having become infected by the SARS-CoV-2 virus, the COVID virus, the coronavirus, then that has come into the body, into the system, throughout the body, and thinking specifically of long COVID fatigue and thinking muscle fatigue, well, the virus has got into the muscle cells and has caused damage, maybe even death, certainly malfunction. And one effect that it has on thinking fatigue and energy production, etc., is the effect on the mitochondria. If the cells, the muscle cells, have been knocked out, have been killed, then that means there are going to be less of the mitochondria available in order to create energy. Equally, the virus could, if they've not killed the muscle cells, they've caused malfunctioning of the muscle cells, damage of the muscle cells, and then that leads to, therefore, damage of the mitochondria. Again, less energy produced by mitochondria, and therefore less of the energy available to undertake sort of muscular activity. I didn't say that mitochondria, just to sort of, for those of you who don't know, are the, if you like, the energy factories within each cell. There are anything between 500 and 1,000 of these little sort of components of the cell that then whose function is to create energy. Energy being ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is a sort of an energy molecule which brings about sort of, which basically is the energy currency that catalyzes any of the metabolic processes within cells. So, like I said, if the muscle cells are damaged, there are going to be fewer mitochondria, and therefore they're not working as efficiently for those metabolic pathways that bring about sort of functioning of muscle fibers. Putting mitochondria to one side, another direct effect of direct cause for long COVID fatigue is damage of the nerve fibers, the small nerve fibers that innervate the blood vessels that serve the muscles. Okay, if those fibers are damaged, therefore the blood vessels don't work correctly and don't open up when they need, so they don't dilate when they're needed to undertake muscular activity. Focusing still on reduced blood supply of muscles that with less oxygen, hence less oxygen, less energy production. Oxygen is needed in the mitochondria. Another cause for reduction in the blood supply to the muscles is the dysautonomic effect. Okay, so I'll talk about dysautonomia in a minute, but basically the nerves that serve the blood vessels from within the sort of the brain and bring about that contraction and relaxation of those blood vessels can be affected from centrally because of the effect of the long COVID on the sort of the brain functioning, the autonomic and automatic nervous system. Likewise, another cause for reduced oxygen is the microthrombi. There are small blood clots that we have been able to demonstrate by scans that are created within the COVID/long COVID process, and they block off those little blood vessels, those capillaries that serve the muscles. Hence, less oxygen to the muscles, hence less energy production. Along with those microclots formation, there are amyloid proteins that are laid down within the muscle fibers, and these have been seen with biopsies of the muscle fibers, and that amyloid protein serves as a source of inflammation. Any inflamed cells don't work so efficiently, therefore again don't produce the ATP, the energy currency, to be able to function normally. Another cause, a direct cause found in long COVID for long COVID fatigue is a difficulty, a problem with your immune system, the immune system that looks at the acquired immune system, and that is the creation of autoantibodies, antibodies that attack your own normal tissues. So autoantibodies have been found that target muscles, and autoantibodies have been found that target nerves. So both of those therefore interfere with the normal functioning of the muscles. And finally, deconditioning. Again, this is a direct effect of the long COVID, and as a consequence of being unwell. And being unwell, you're not as active, therefore you lose your normal condition through that inactivity, and that's unavoidable because of prolonged rest that you undertake in order to recover. So that deconditioning can then lead likewise to fatigue. So those are the sort of direct causes for long COVID fatigue. What are the indirect causes? Well, the indirect causes, firstly, there's the respiratory causes. So as we know, coronavirus is a respiratory virus. It is part of one of the sort of common cold viruses, but obviously it's much more invasive and damaging. But one of the areas, being a cold virus, it's inhaled, and then it can have its effect on the respiratory system. So the lung pockets, the air sacs, the alveoli in the lungs can be affected. The lining of the lungs, or the small blood vessels on the outside of the lungs that then take the oxygen away, or indeed the sort of the mucus that can and the inflammatory fluids, the exudates, that then accumulate within the alveoli. All these, if you like, create a barrier between the actual airspace in the air sac to the blood, to the bloodstream. The oxygen then finds it difficult. It finds it difficult to actually get across the wall and into the bloodstream. So that is an indirect cause of the fatigue that you can feel in long COVID. I talked previously about the inflammation that it can be set up in specifically in those muscle cells, but inflammation generally actually leads to sort of poor tissue function overall, and then that contributes to and results in fatigue. I use the word dysautonomia, that is dysfunctional autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is the automatic nervous system that you actually don't have to think about. It's this nervous system that controls things like pulse and blood pressure and temperature regulation. Dysautonomia is very common in long COVID, and part of dysautonomia, this imbalance of the sympathetic nervous system with the parasympathetic nervous system, the flight or fight nervous system, the rest and digest nervous system. Imbalance of those two nervous systems, i.e. dysautonomia, leads to fatigue. Turning now to the brain, then the brain can be affected, and usually is affected, with the acute COVID infection, and then that effect perpetuates within the long COVID phase and the long COVID illness. And one of the areas that is affected is the area that in the brainstem in which there is a sort of what's known as the sickness behaviour response, and that is a sort of, if you like, a brainstem insult. When you get flu, you feel unwell, don't you? General malaise. You have, the symptoms like headache and temperature, rigors coming and going, but you just feel unwell and you don't want to do anything, and you just feel, sluggish, etc. That is a sickness behaviour response that any viral illness can create, but usually more severe viral illnesses such as flu. And the same goes for the SARS-CoV-2 virus. That can result in this sickness behaviour response. As I say, it's due to an insult or damage of the brainstem. Still sticking with the brain, then there's the sleep disturbance that as many of you, most of you probably know, is very common in long COVID. Most people have some degree of sleep most people with long COVID have some degree of sleep disturbance, and there are lots of reasons for this. There's something called the HPA disruption. That's the hypothalamo-pituitary adrenal disruption. There's disruption of the limbic system. That's the sort of, if you like, the emotions and the memory system within the brain. And there's disruption of the functioning of the pineal gland, which releases melatonin, should release melatonin, the naturally occurring sleep hormone that helps us get to sleep. So any of those things can be disrupted in long COVID. All of them will sort of result in sleep disturbance. And if you have a poor night's sleep, if your sleep is disturbed, poor night's sleep, you're not refreshed, therefore that leads to and adds to all the other causes for the fatigue. Shifting from the nervous system and the brain down to the gut now. So many research studies have demonstrated this problem of gut dysbiosis. So microbiota, the naturally occurring microbes, bacteria, friendly bacteria, in inverted commas, friendly bacteria in our large intestines, that normal, healthy, friendly balance of those bacteria is disturbed in long COVID. This is not good news because they are very important for many functions. They have an extremely important role in supporting the immune system. The majority of the immune system is actually along the length of the bowel. And so, if the gut bacteria, the microbiota, is disturbed, it means that the immune system is not being properly supported. So therefore the immune system is not so good, and as we know in long COVID, the immune system is key to many of the things that go wrong and results in all the symptoms of long COVID. Other problems that arise because of gut dysbiosis are the fact that conversion of short-chain fatty acids from some food materials that have not been digested and find themselves in the large colon are not digested by the microbiota like they should do. So therefore the sugars derived from the short-chain fatty acids are not available for the cells that line the large intestine, and then therefore the large intestine becomes a bit leaky, then allows toxins from the intestine to get into the circulation, further enhancing the general inflammatory processes in the body. So other functions of the microbiota are production of vitamin K, absorption of vitamin B12, production of neurotransmitters, so serotonin. I mentioned that earlier on, the happy neurotransmitter that stops us getting depressed. It's produced in the large intestine and it's absorbed into the circulation, and then it's concentrated in the brain. Likewise, GABA, likewise dopamine. These are neurotransmitters that are produced in the lumen of the large intestine. So if you haven't got a healthy microbiota, if your friendly bacteria are not so friendly, it means all those functions are not working efficiently. That means they will all contribute to your long COVID fatigue. And finally, again, thinking about this long COVID fatigue, what about the effects of long COVID on the mental health? So it's understandable, having gone through what you've gone through, the impact of long COVID on your everyday life, your lifestyle, the things that have been taken from you, the effects it had on your interactions with the family dynamics and with friends, and not being able to do all those things that that make up your normal life and bring you pleasure and job, for example, as well as the effect on your sort of the vocational side, and not being able to work, so therefore not bringing in the money, problems with the mortgage, so all that obviously has a massive impact on your stress levels, on anxiety, mood changes. Some people develop sort of anxiety and depression even. And all that stress, anxiety and depression can also have a fatiguing element to it. So again, that's, if you like, the final and the final indirect cause for your long COVID fatigue. And I've really sort of gone into this in great depth and talked at length on the direct and indirect causes of long COVID fatigue. And I've done that for a reason, and an important reason, because I think it is really essential that you take that on board, that there are physical reasons for your fatigue, okay? And that, as I said, is important because it validates the condition for when people say, well, is long COVID really a thing? And, surely, you should have got over it by now. And that, there's this gaslighting and not being believed is a problem with a lot of long COVID patients. And equally, I've heard a lot of long COVID patients say to me and the teams that I work with, I've had it so long. Actually, I can't quite believe it. Maybe it is, imagined, etc. No, as I said, I've given you a whole long list of the physical causes of long COVID, which is so important for your validation and validation to others. And you can say, no, it's not all in my head. It is a reality. No, I'm not work shy. I'd love to be at work. But, this is a physical thing. So it's important for the validation. It's also really important to help you sort of understand the whole process, and then with that understanding you can then understand the strategies behind how to manage the symptoms and how to overcome your long COVID, and specifically, so for this talk, it's how to overcome your long COVID fatigue. So there we are. That's the first part of my talk on long COVID fatigue, the various causes and aspects of that long COVID fatigue. So in part 2, I'll talk about how to tackle it, the strategies and the outcomes. So see you there.